Well, today is week 3 of our summer series, Camera Roll. And as we're moving along with the series, have a few weeks left, I want to remind you all, hopefully you're all taking your photos for your camera roll. And if you're taking your photos, remember, a couple of weeks ago when I started the series, I said, take your photos, whatever inspires you, whatever captures your attention. And if you have those, I'll put some sort of a little slide display together at the end of our series here at the end of August. So please send those over. Whatever has captured your attention, for whatever the reason happens to be. It doesn't matter what for. You might not understand exactly why you're taking that picture, but that's the beauty of it, because then you can look back in your camera roll and see all the things that had captured your eye months or years ago. And today, I have a few pictures. I'm actually going to use 2 photos out of my camera roll. And our sermon is titled, I Don't Want to Have a Heart That is Boiling Like a Volcano. Now, let's give a little background to this sermon. It starts off March 15th, 2019. There were 2 mass shootings in New Zealand just a few years ago. The same shooter went into 2 mosque churches and started shooting at people. Massive tragedy. Unfortunately, this is something we experience here in our country as well. And there's something wrong with this. I think we would all agree. There's something completely wrong with this. This is evil. We shouldn't have to fear for our safety, whether it's in school or a place of worship. But March 15th, 2019 was the day that changed many people's lives. So there was, a few weeks later, there was a remembrance of what had happened at these mosque churches. And one of the survivors was asked this question by a reporter. He was asked, why did you? Forgiveness is it's not a one-time occurrence, it's continuous. So why do you choose to forgive the shooter? This is someone who was in attendance the day that the shooter came to the mosque, someone who knew people who had died, people who had been injured, families whose lives had been turned upside down. Just a few weeks later, he was asked, well, why do you choose to forgive the shooter? And here was his response. Because I don't want to have a heart that is boiling like a volcano. This was just a few weeks, 2.5 weeks after this event took place. Why do you choose to forgive? Why aren't you seeking vengeance? Why aren't you harboring hatred in your heart? Well, it's because I don't want to have a heart that is boiling like a volcano. Now, many of us, hopefully, will not experience such a situation as this. That's our prayer. It's what we hope for, that we never have to be in such a situation. But the truth, and we can go to the next slide, the truth is, we are all faced with moments in life when our hearts feel like they're going to boil over like a volcano. We've all faced moments in our lives when there's a choice before us. A harm has been done to us, something that we feel isn't right. We've been harmed by someone, by a certain event, words that someone has said, actions people have taken against us. And we have a choice. We can choose to move forward in forgiveness, or we can close our hearts. And we can hold on to the wrong that was done, doing everything in our power to get revenge. We are all faced with these situations when it feels like our heart is going to boil over. Now let's go one more slide. There's a book in the Bible. It's one of my all-time favorite books. It's the book of Jonah. And Jonah, oftentimes, it gets boiled down to a question of, well, was he really swallowed by a fish, or is that just a parable? Come on. That's like a really boring question. Who cares? Like, seriously, if that's what you're so focused on, you're going to miss the point of the entire book. And seriously, It's not a whale anyway. The Hebrew is fish. So when you teach the kids about the Jonah story, it's a fish, a big fish. Let's throw away the idea of a whale. But the truth is, and unfortunately, we get so caught up in these details. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Blah, blah, blah. And we talk all night long, and we miss the fact that this is a book about forgiveness. This is a book about some of the deepest matters of the heart. It's a book about what it means to be human. I mean, I'm sure right now, as soon as I started talking about forgiveness, maybe your heart began to sink a little bit. And there's something, there's that event. Maybe it's brought to memory a really painful moment in your past. Maybe there's something that you've been carrying with you weeks, months, years, decades. And whenever anyone brings up the idea of forgiveness, it's like this little pain in your heart. It's like someone sticking you with pins, or it's almost like it's like paper cuts. It's there, and every time that you touch something, you're reminded of the wound, something that was done, some harm that was inflicted upon you years ago in the past. Well, I absolutely love the story of Jonah, because Jonah, as we'll see here in a moment, it doesn't just give us all the answers that we want, but rather the book of Jonah ends with a question. It throws us into the story. Now, a little background on the book of Jonah. Jonah, he's a prophet. He's a Hebrew prophet, and he is a reluctant prophet. So when God gives him his message, his mission, God says, I want you to go to Nineveh, I want you to preach to the Ninevites, and I want you to tell them to repent. In other words, God is offering forgiveness to the Ninevites. So what does Jonah do? Immediately he goes to Nineveh, right? He's like, yeah, awesome, this is a great deal. I totally want to do this. No, he runs in the complete opposite direction. He does everything he can to escape the mission, because Nineveh at this time was the capital city of Assyria. The Assyrian Empire was a pretty brutal empire. If you know anything about history, you know the Assyrians, they were quite brutal to the people that they conquered. The Jewish nation happened to be one of the people groups conquered by the Assyrians. The Assyrians went in, they marched into Jerusalem, and they destroyed part of their world, part of their home, and then they actually took some of those living there and they marched them back to the empire of Assyria. They forcibly removed them from their land. So if you are alive at the time of Jonah, let's say you are a prophet, God's coming to you, you're a Jewish prophet, you have a whole history with the people of Nineveh. You have a whole history with the Assyrian Empire. You know exactly the harm that they have committed against your people, your family. You probably knew of some people who had been removed from their home and forced to live in exile. So there's a lot of unforgiveness, bitterness, maybe we could say hatred, that Jonah is harboring in his heart for this people group. And when God offers him a message, or God doesn't, when he gives him this choice, although basically, as you see in the story, there really is no choice. No matter where Jonah goes, God continues to track him down and says, no, you're going to go do this. I don't care what you think, you're going to go do this. But when God first gives this message to Jonah, he's like, not doing it. They've caused me too much harm. I have no love for these people. How could God possibly love them? I am not going to bring... I must have heard wrong. God must have given me the wrong message, wrong people group. I must be having to go somewhere else. And what we find here is that Jonah, as we know, he eventually goes to Nineveh. He preaches this message, and what do the Ninevites do in the story of Jonah? They repent, like, oh, we are wrong. God, thank you so much for forgiveness. And then Jonah's pretty upset by this. And here's his response, Jonah Chapter 4. And I guess we're cut off a little bit, but we can still see it. If you can't see, it's kind of like you're at the eye doctor right now. Can you read what's on the top line right there? But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, the fact that the Ninevites repented. This is very wrong. And so he became angry. Can anyone relate to that? You have an enemy. Maybe you don't quite see them as an enemy, but someone who has done great harm to you. And the only thing you wish for is for their downfall. And now they're successful. They're succeeding. It just doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem fair. If God is real, well, Shouldn't they be suffering and shouldn't I be elevated? Like, why are the people that have done great harm to me, why is everything going okay for them? And not just okay, why are they like up and to the right? And meanwhile, I'm just kind of floundering here. You ever find yourself asking that question? That's what's happening with Jonah. And so he prayed to the Lord. He said, this is what I said when I was still at home. Isn't this what I said? This is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God. You're slow to anger. You're abounding in love. I know how wide and how deep your grace is. I knew this was going to happen. This is why I didn't want to go. This is why I ran the other way, because I didn't want them to have your forgiveness. I didn't want them to have your love. Here's a God who relents. I knew you were a God. Go back. Sorry, we're not done there. I knew you were a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life. It's better for me to die than live. It's better for me to die than to have to see them receive your love. Ooh. Those are some pretty harsh words. Pretty raw, are they not? I mean, can you not feel the emotion here? Jonah's sitting on a hillside overlooking the city of Nineveh. God, I knew it. I knew it. I knew that your love is too great. And the story ends, the book of Jonah ends, and the Lord said, you have been concerned about this plant. There was a plant that came up, it provided shade, then the plant withered, no longer provided shade. So Jonah was now upset that the plant that had provided shade was no longer there, and he needed his SPF, but he didn't bring it at home, or he left it at home, he didn't bring it with him. So now he's like, seriously, I'm already upset, and now here I am in the scorching heat without any SPF 50? God, like, seriously, take away my life. I mean, it just keeps getting worse and worse for Jonah. He's like, man, it was already bad to begin with, and now, meanwhile, the Ninevites, they're having a party. And here I am all by myself just sulking on a hillside. So God says, the plant sprang up overnight. It died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people, and I love this line, who cannot tell their right hand from their left. 120,000 people who, they're kind of walking blind through life. God's like, Jonah, you've seen the light. You've experienced my love. You knew how great it is, and you wanted to withhold it. I mean, this is a people group that they're walking in darkness. Shouldn't you be overjoyed in the fact that now they have turned from the life that they had been living? Aren't you overjoyed that now they're experiencing the same love and grace that you've been experiencing throughout your entire life? Like, you're concerned about a plant. Who cares about the plant? I'm concerned about more than 120,000 people living in this city. And also many animals. God is an animal lover. This is how the story of Jonah ends. It gives us a no answer, but rather it invites us into the story. Now, when I read the book of Jonah, the story raises countless questions. I mean, there's just one question. When I read this, I'm like, oh, what about this? And what about this and this? So I picked out 5 timeless, universal questions that the story of Jonah raises. Questions that I think we still ask in our lives today, especially when we are confronted with the idea of forgiveness. So the first question, will we be able to forgive? Has someone ever caused some harm to you, and you're left there, lying there at night, asking yourself, will I ever be able to forgive them for what they've done? A second question that follows right up on this one, can we heal from the past? Now, the story of Jonah is about an entire nation. Can we, as the Israelites, the Jewish people, can we heal from our past? Can we heal from what the Assyrians have done to us? Personalize it. Can I heal from my past, from what I've experienced? You ever find yourself asking that? Will I ever be able to heal from this? Sometimes in the early moments, it just feels so raw that you're just, will I ever be able to move forward into some degree of wholeness from that which has been done to me? And then here's the third question. Will we be able, or will I be able to move forward unhindered by bitterness? You ever find yourself stuck there? Kind of in a spiral of bitterness? It's a certain person, and whenever their name is mentioned, it's just that gut-wrenching feeling. Or maybe a song comes on the radio, and the song reminds you of a particular moment in your life that was quite painful. And you just feel caught in this vortex, this spiral, and you cry, will I ever be able to move forward without the bitterness that I'm dragging behind me? And then a fourth question. And this is a question the Israelites, I'm sure, would have been asking. This is, to me, I read Jonah and I think about my kids and I ask myself, well, what's the legacy I'm going to pass on? What am I going to pass on to those who come after me? To my family, my kids, even my friends. What are they going to remember? What am I going to pass on, attempting to move forward in forgiveness? Or is my example going to be an example of harboring bitterness and vengeance? And then here's a fifth question I think is quite particular to Jonah. And this is the question that God was asking him. It's the question of, well, can we as a people, we as individuals, can we be a conduit of divine forgiveness? Remember, God, like 120,000 people, they don't know the right from their left. You've experienced my forgiveness. Many of you are here today because you have experienced the forgiveness that comes through Christ. And it's changed your life. Through your life, can you be a conduit of that same forgiveness for others? Can you simply be a funnel of that forgiveness where it comes to you and then it just leaves, it goes through you to the world around you? Now, as I was thinking about this particular sermon, I thought, well, what's the best way to illustrate what it looks like to have a heart that's boiling like a volcano? And I thought about a science experiment that I have attempted many times in the past. And I thought about doing it here, but then I realized, it can get kind of messy. And we've only been here for a couple of weeks. That's the last thing I want to do. Actually, the first time we came here as the board, we were checking out the theater. We were looking at everything. They gave me this giant bundle of popcorn. And then we went outside. We were on the steps just talking about the space, how it would work, logistics. What do? My whole bag of popcorn goes flying right there on the steps. I had to go back inside and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I spilled my bag of popcorn that you gave me, making a mess already. They were so nice about it. They're like, hey, you want us to get you another bag of popcorn? I'm like, no, it's all right. Thank you. So I thought about this science experiment, and here's another picture from my camera roll. This was, let's keep 2 more slides. How many of you have done the Mentos and Coke trick? All right, a few of us know exactly what this is. 2020, during COVID, it was Reese's birthday in May, and we weren't gathering together with people at this point. We were still keeping our distance, 6 feet, keeping space. But we said, why doesn't some family come over and we can hang out outside for a little bit? And Uncle Dave was going to put on a magic show for everyone. So here we are, and Reese was very excited. It was his birthday. He turned 3 on this day. Here we are dumping Mentos into a Coke can and seeing how well it exploded. Well, I don't know why I did this, but I bought the cheap soda. So there is this giant buildup. This is going to be amazing. Reese was so excited. All the kids were excited. And it just totally bombed. So this time, I got the real stuff. And I decided I would experiment. So I got 3 different bottles. I got a seltzer water bottle, I got a Coke, and then a Diet Coke. And yesterday in the afternoon, Reese was quite excited to try this one again. I think he forgot about it from 2 years ago. So he went out into the yard, and I videotaped it so that you can see what happens when you dump Mentos into a bottle of seltzer, a bottle of Coke, and then a bottle of Diet Coke. So let's play these videos.
All right, let's see.
All right, it's supposed to be a video. There it is. All right, can we play it again? Maybe it needed to load. Oh, no. Wait, hold on. Pause it. Don't give it away. Go back a slide. No, not that one. No. No! I should have just done it here. Okay, wait, go back 2. Okay, we're going to get there. It's going to be well worth it, I promise you. It's not going to be like the dud from 2020. There we go. Okay, we're at the beginning. Yes.
All right, let's see.
All right, so what do we think about this? It's all right, right? Just kind of like, all right. Let's try the next one. All right, not bad, right? Now, I remember when I was a youth pastor, I did this trick as a youth pastor, and there is actually this device, like someone invented this thing, where you would put kind of like a funnel on top of the bottle of Coke, and you would load all the Mentos in there, then you would pull a string, and you could quickly run away, and then they would all just sort of drop in. I guess I'd gotten rid of it, so I didn't have it. I had to do it the hard way. So you can look online. If you want to impress anyone, go buy this device. But let's go to the third bottle now, Diet Coke.
Oh. Whoa! It's taller than you.
All right. So what did we notice? Which was the best one? The Diet Coke. The Diet Coke. See, this is how I think it works with forgiveness. It's about the condition of your heart. I don't want to have a heart that's boiling like a volcano. Let's go one slide here. One more, or we can, watch the beauty of Diet Coke and Mentos again. Whew. Look at that geyser of, what is it? Acid, the acidity in there. I don't know what makes it go. So when we dumped the Mentos into the bottle of seltzer, it was like, not so great, right? But then as you put in the Coke and then the Diet Coke, it really shot up. The seltzer was able to absorb the Mentos. The Coke was a quite reactive environment for the Mentos. See, the way it works with forgiveness, it's all about the condition of our heart. Do we have a heart that erupts when something is thrown into it, placed into it? Or are we cultivating a heart that is able to absorb the harm that inevitably will be inflicted upon us in life? Are we cultivating a life of reactivity or a non-reactive life? And think about that seltzer. It still erupted a little bit, did it not? It still overflowed. I mean, come on. Some of the harm and hurt, the pain that you've experienced, it's painful. How would you not at least have some sort of reaction? You're human. It's normal. It's natural. The wisdom is, well, how do we cultivate a heart that we're able to absorb the majority of that which we experience? So I want to give you 4 ways to create a calm and peaceful heart when it comes to forgiveness. Let's go to the first one. How do we forgive and how do we calm our hearts? First, so we have to remember. We have to remember and acknowledge the harm that's been done to us. I love this quote by Desmond Tutu, who saw some of the greatest atrocities this world has experienced in the midst of apartheid in South Africa. And as apartheid was ending, when they were trying to get the different sides together so that South Africa could move forward, not as a country that was torn apart by bitterness, but a country that could heal through forgiveness. The first step, Desmond Tutu said, who oversaw this entire process, this process of reconciliation, coming together when great harm had been done to all different people. He said, forgiving is not forgetting. So that phrase, just forgive and forget about it, or forget and forgive. He's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You can never just forget about it. If you try to forget about it, it's going to lie there somewhere in the recesses of your heart. And it's going to lash out at the most inopportune times. The way to forgive is you first must remember. He says, remembering and not using your right to hit back. So not being caught up in a cycle or a spiral of revenge. It's like the way in which you escalate. Someone does something to you, maybe at work, and then you go home and you take it out on the dog. You ever experienced this? Or maybe you're having a conversation with someone and you don't, like you're wondering, why are they so angry at me? Well, the reason why is because of 3 conversations before that they had earlier in the day. So the way in which to cultivate a calm and peaceful heart is you remember. You acknowledge, this really hurt. This bothered me. I'm having trouble forgiving. I can't just simply move beyond this because it did something to me. It affected me in a deep, deep way. So how do we create a calm and peaceful heart so that we can absorb rather than erupt, and so that we don't have a heart that is boiling like a volcano? We remember. And we speak it. We write it down. We voice it to someone else. We cry out in a prayer, whatever we must do, but we have to find a way to exhaust it, to exhaust all the pain. And then a second way. And this one has helped me tremendously over the years. Whenever I'm faced with a moment, am I going to forgive them or am I going to hold on to this? Here's a trick that I've learned. I try to envision the type of person that I want to be. We all know, maybe we all have that angry neighbor. And every time you're getting your mail and there they are again, you're like, oh, I don't want to see Harry again. Please just stay in your house. Or like you make a couple of, you walk a couple of steps and you see them coming and you run the other way because it's not going to end well. It's not going to be it's only 7:30 in the morning. I can't handle him at 7:30 in the morning. Maybe we have a coworker this way. Every time you see that person, you're just, all right, they're angry at something else. They're upset about something else. And I think about for myself, okay, what's the type of person that I want to be? I want to be a loving person. I don't want to be someone who, whenever I go up to talk to someone, they turn and run the other way because they know that I'm going to complain about something else. So I think about, okay, I want to be a person of love. I want to be a person of grace, a person of compassion. So what are the steps that I need to do in order to become that person? I remember, this is going on like 15 years ago. I had a really good friend I went to seminary with, and a couple times a week we'd go for a walk on this bike trail behind where I lived. And something had happened within that week, maybe even the day before, and I was telling him about it, and it was really painful. I felt like this person had done some great harm to me. They really betrayed my trust, and we were walking on the trail, and he asked me, he's like, do you want to hold on to this? Or are you ready to let it go? And I thought about it, and by the time we got back to where our cars were parked, I'm like, I want to let this go. I'm ready to just forgive. I'm ready to move on from this because I knew that if I held on to it, it would take me away from the type of person that I truly wanted to be. The places that I wanted to go in life, the things that I wanted to do. And I knew that if I held on to this, it was going to take me down a bad path. So what's really helped me for cultivating a calm and peaceful heart, I think about, okay, Dave, who do you want to be? When others look at you, when others talk to you, what do you want them to see? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to experience? Then here's a third way. And this is another trick, call it a life hack. This is some other wisdom that has tremendously helped me with forgiving. You acknowledge the humanity of every single person. And I came across this quote, and when I read this, I was like, man, that Longfellow dude, he's got it down. I mean, look at this name, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I mean, just write that on a job application. You're going to totally get the job. Like with a name like that, I mean, you're going places in life. So here's what he said. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. I mean, that one pierces me a bit. And when you look around at other people that have harmed you, the truth is they're dealing with their own stuff. They have their own struggles in life. And oftentimes, we're unaware of what they're going through, of what they've gone through. So them lashing out on us, them betraying us, the harm that they do, oftentimes it's because of what happened a little bit further up the river. And we just think about that one moment, that one encounter, and we don't realize that there's a whole world swimming around inside that person that has shaped them. And they have their own hurts and pains that they're carrying around. And it's not right. It's not right. It's wrong. It needs to be remembered and acknowledged. But when I think about the humanity of other people and I think about, well, they have their own struggles, it helps me find the grace to forgive. It helps me find the grace to move forward without holding on to bitterness here in my heart. And then here's a fourth, which I mentioned a bit in that story. And here's another, one of the all-time greatest quotes on forgiveness by Louis Schmeeds. Another great last name. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. Ugh. How many times you think, well, if I don't forgive them, their life is going to be miserable. And then you run into them 5 years later and they've totally forgotten about you. But you're lying in bed thinking about them every single night and that one conversation. And meanwhile, they're off living life. Forgiveness is to set a prisoner free. Prisoner you think is this other person, and then you come to realize you've actually been holding yourself captive. Now, I put here Star Trek. No, this quote does not come from Star Trek. Schmeeds was not in Star Trek. The last season of Star Trek Discovery. How many of you have watched Star Trek Discovery? All right. Yes. All right. We got a few Trekkies in the crowd. Whenever I go for a hike with Ted, we always talk about Star Trek. So Discovery, all right. Not as good as Shatner, of course. How could you ever top Shatner? But the Discovery, it has its moments. But I thought the story arc in this past season, part of the story arc was pretty powerful because it was all about forgiveness. There was great harm that was done to one of the characters early on in the season. And what you see as the season progresses is what his unforgiveness is doing to him. How it's clouding his judgment. How he's losing love from others because of how this unforgiveness and this need for revenge is eating away at his soul. It was a pretty powerful story because you see it continuing to eat away from one episode to the next until finally, spoiler alert, all right, it's been out for a couple of months, so I think it's all fair game at this point, he's able to let go. And it's as if this burden lifts. There's this release. For the whole season, he had been a prisoner of his own making. And now, through forgiveness, he's being set free. Yeah, there's some things we hold on to in life because we think that shouldn't have happened. And yes, it's true. Think about where we started this sermon. March 15th, 2019, 2 mass shootings. It's wrong. It's evil. We shouldn't have to live in a world where things like this happen. We all desire to live in a world where everything is at peace, where wholeness reigns. The unfortunate reality is that we live in a world that shows its cracks from time to time, that shows the brokenness of the world around us. Forgiveness is the way to repair the brokenness. This is why the story of Jonah is so profound, because we all deal with this issue. We all have our nicks, the chunks that are taken out of our skin, and we're left with a choice. Will we be able to forgive and absorb, or will we have a heart that's boiling like a volcano, erupting and continuing this cycle of harm and revenge and bitterness? I mean, this is why the story of Jesus is so healing. Because on the cross, we see Jesus, fully human, fully divine, who takes on all the brokenness, all the sin, all the harm, the evil, the hurts that are inflicted in this world. And Jesus, rather than erupting, God, rather than saying, you're all responsible, I'm going to make you all pay, I'm going to hold this against you, we find the story of resurrection, of God restoring through Jesus. The cross, one of the worst human atrocities. And we find God doing his greatest work of forgiveness and healing through this act. So today, I want to celebrate the act of Jesus on the cross, communion. When Jesus absorbs all the pain, all the evil, and then holds out forgiveness. I don't hold it against you. The way God sees you is as forgiven, restored, whole people. So through the story of Jonah, can we be a conduit of that forgiveness? The offer, the invitation is for us to come forward, to take the bread, take the cup. Remember the forgiveness of Christ that is over you, that speaks healing to your life. For us to partake of that, and then to carry that forgiveness forward. So we'll have a song play. This is for you. It's an invitation for you to reflect. Is there anything swirling around, anything that you've been carrying within you? Any unforgiveness, bitterness, and it's leading you in a direction that you know it's not the direction you desire to go in. It's not the life that God desires for you, the life of wholeness and joy and vibrancy that God desires. It's actually weighing you down. The offer today is to leave it at the table. So may you come forward, experience again the forgiveness of Christ. And as you do so, may you find the strength to lay down all that's been plaguing you, so that you may come to discover a heart that is filled with peace and able to absorb not forget, to remember, and to absorb and respond with love and with grace.